Okay now.
Thank you. All right, welcome for day 2 of our hands-on building sessions with the Data Cloud Bootcamp. We've got Rahul as our guest builder. Thank you, Rahul, for joining. And Sandesh will be leading the build. So I'll pass it off to Sandesh.
Thank you, Tim. And yeah, thanks, Rahul, for volunteering to be our builder today. Just for context for everybody, we've been building an ingestion API solution based on my session, I think last week, or maybe the one before that. What we're trying to do is we have a mobile application that needs to ingest customer checkpoint data. So things like when a customer signed up to the mobile application, when they logged in, when they deposited cash, linked a bank, things like that, just a few onboarding items that we want to bring into Data Cloud. And last week, we had Devi as a builder, and excuse me, and she did a great job setting up our connector and data stream, which from the session is an important first step to setting up that data connection between Data Cloud and Ingestion API, and really any other source, but Ingestion API is special because you have to custom build all of them yourself, whereas others, you may have data kits or bundles that do these steps for you. So today we'll build on that. Since we have the connector and the data stream set up, we will now start building the connected app and the integration user that will actually connect our data to the Ingestion API. Because once you have the connector set up and the data stream set up, Data Cloud is ready to receive Ingestion API calls, but Salesforce is not, right? Because Data Cloud is behind an authentication and authorization layer. So you can't call Data Cloud APIs without some sort of authorization. And to do that, if you remember, any external application connection to the Salesforce platform, this is not Data Cloud specific. This is something you'd have to do even if you wanted to connect any other external application to your Salesforce. For that, we'll build a connected app, which is a way to validate or authenticate, authorize that external application, in our case, the mobile app, to the Salesforce platform, right? So we'll be setting that up. And we could skip the integration user builder part and use our own users, like Rahul's user, for example, but it's best practice to set up an integration user when setting up an external app, because it makes a lot of things easier. You have one role for the user, it makes auditing easier and things like that. So we'll follow those best practices and also create an integration user. All right. So Rahul, you ready to start?
Yes, I'm ready.
Awesome. So let's go to Data Cloud setup first and see the connector and data stream that we'll be using. Sorry, just the connector first.
Sure.
So for people who also joined our last hands-on session, we did make a few things here, but we'll be using our full connector instead, because if you remember, we only ingested a few fields when Devi was building. So Rahul, if you want to go to the Ingestion API tab instead of connector, it is a little confusing, but all the connectors that are for Ingestion API sit here instead. If you want to click on that Bootcamp mobile app stream, that is the connector we'll be using. Okay, so you can see that we have already uploaded a YAML schema that has all these objects. However, today we'll focus on the sign up and the login part. So if you click on View Full Schema, Rahul, scroll a little bit below. Should be something at the center. Yep. Now, if you want to go to the sign up and the login items on the left, we can see what items we are bringing in on each of those. So this has a lot of stuff. This will be the profile data stream that we'll bring in, right? So this is all the first name, last name, if the customer has agreed to terms, linked a bank, deposited cash, like I was talking about in the session. We also have some extra items like mobile app ID that is not really used, but it's there. We were still figuring out the use case for that one. Now, if we go to the login part, that's much simpler. This is one of the engagement streams, right? All we want to know is that a certain user logged in. So we have an identifier there, or two rather, which is user ID and the email. So we are bringing those ID in, and then the other, some are required. So for example, a timestamp is always required if you are bringing in an engagement stream, because we want to know exactly when that happened, right? Yeah, so this is what we'll be focusing on. Just wanted to show this before we start building the connected app, because this will be important later when we actually make the API calls. Now we can move on to the platform. Let's go to Data Cloud and also see the stream just to make sure they're there. If you go to data streams, yep. There should be a bootcamp list there. Yep. Bootcamp data stream.
Okay.
Nice. Okay. So like we were talking about, we'll be focusing on number 6 and 7 today. Right. So the login and sign up. They are there. Now they are functional. All right. So if it makes sense to you, Rahul, let's go and create the connected app now. So if you want to go to the setup.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, let's go to the app manager. You can do a quick find. Just type in app manager. Oh, should have. Is it called something else? Maybe just type app.
Mobile and
Oh, this is Data Cloud setup. Sorry, we should go to the normal setup. Yeah, like I was saying, this is not Data Cloud specific, right? You would be building this on the platform or any other applications. Yep. New connected app. Let's go. Okay, so there are two sections here that we have to fill out, right? One is the information, and this matters less. So you can type in anything. Let's call it, I don't know, hands-on, Rahul's app, whatever you want to call it, Rahul. Okay.
do I need to fill
Feel
that?
free to put your own email in. Yeah, we do need that. We can leave the non-essential fields empty, or yeah, put that in, that's fine. So those are just the identifiers, right? We need to fill in those basic information, but the important information for us today will be the OAuth settings, which is right below. Okay, let's enable that. And so here, before we select stuff, let me explain what we're doing here, right? So when you're calling Salesforce APIs, there are two layers of authentication and authorization. So one layer to authenticate yourself, one layer to authorize yourself. And what is the difference, right? Authentication will allow Salesforce to verify that you are a legitimate user, right? This is just about your validity as a user. You're authenticating. It's like providing, excuse me, it's like providing username and password and logging into a system. That's authentication. However, just because you are a valid user doesn't mean you can push data to Data Cloud. Right? Doesn't mean you can access lead accounts, for example, or contacts. So there is also a layer of authorization where Salesforce verifies that you're allowed to do what you're trying to do. In our case, ingest data to Data Cloud, which is this OAuth scope part, right? So we'll be uploading a digital certificate to actually authenticate yourself, and we'll be allowing people, we'll be assigning these OAuth scopes to authorize them, right? To allow them to do stuff. And there are a few that you need for most external applications, which is the API OAuth scope. So if you want to scroll, there must be offline access or something like that. Yep, so manage data, user data via API. That's one of them. 2 steps below that. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we need for API access. We also need the offline access, Rahul. So the one towards the bottom. That one. This is for the flow. And now this allows you access to the system. This allows you access to Salesforce. Now, to allow yourself to actually ingest data, you need to also use the ingestion API. Yeah, so if you see that towards the middle, you have managed data, Data Cloud, ingestion API data. We need that to make the ingestion API calls through the user. Okay, yeah, so that's great for scopes. And maybe, so we'll be using the JWT bearer flow today. And what that entails is that, so like I said before, you need to authenticate yourself, or rather the mobile app needs to authenticate itself to make calls to Data Cloud. And to do that, the mobile app somehow needs to provide credentials to Salesforce, right? If it were a user authenticating, you would type in your username, you type in your password, or somebody would set that up for you. So imagine you're logging into Trailhead, right? If you are not logged into Trailhead, Trailhead automatically redirects you to Salesforce. And then you log into Salesforce, and Salesforce is like, hey, Trailhead, this person is cool, by the way, right? And then redirects back to Trailhead, and Trailhead knows that you are a valid Salesforce user. That's how things work. So we'll do something similar, but it'll be a different kind of flow, in that if we're making a API call from the mobile app to our Salesforce instance, we don't want anybody to do that Salesforce login, right? We want to handle that for them so that the mobile app can, on the background, sync to Salesforce, sync to Data Cloud without the user ever knowing that it's happening. And for that, we generally use what's called a server-to-server flow, which means that the server can connect to another server. In this case, the mobile app server can connect to the Salesforce server without letting the user interact, or without making the user, forcing the user to interactively log in. In which case, and JWT bearer flow is a great way to do that. So what that does is, like I said earlier, we'll assign an integration user, and the mobile application will make all the calls on behalf of the integration user. So there'll just be one user sitting in the middle rather than everybody logging in their own credentials, which is very convenient because not everybody who uses our mobile app will be a Salesforce user for us. And one of the essential things in a JWT bearer flow is authenticating via a digital certificate. Because if you are doing that, if you are doing things in the background, if you are authenticating users on the background, and if you're not asking them to use username and password, well, there must be some way to validate that, right? You can't, then how do you even handle that? How do you verify that people are legitimate users or the integration user is actually valid? To do that, what we do is we build a token on the mobile app side, right? And we'll not be covering that part, but the mobile app also has its own authentication. So it builds a token on its side. It sends the token to Salesforce, to this connected app. And the connected app will verify using a certificate that this mobile app is the mobile app that we're currently registering. Right? So not everybody else can do that. Not everybody can create a token that this connected app can verify. And to do that sync, we need to create that certificate. And Rahul, looks like you are on a Windows, right? If you are on a Mac, I was gonna do a demo of the creation of the certificate also. Do you happen to have worked with this before, creating digital certificates?
No, actually not.
Okay. So creating a digital certificate requires an open SSL client. And give me just a second. I just shared a link to an article that I'm following. We recently wrote this for this exact purpose, and we have all the steps listed out there. I'm sharing that because there are links there to go out and look at the OpenSSL client. There's a few descriptions that I might miss here. But what I was going to say is that it requires an OpenSSL client. And I have only worked with that client in a Mac or Linux environment. So what I'll do is let's go through a few steps that are listed there, Rahul, just for context for people. So if you just want to scroll to the section of creating a digital certificate, which is the first section.
So this you are breaking, so could you please repeat one more time?
Sorry, what was that, Rahul?
I'm saying you are breaking, so could you please repeat one more time?
I don't think so. What happened to your tab on the left? Did it? Do you want to try and open the article again?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Yep, just to create the digital certificate part. And all I wanted to show was the code section. If you scroll a little bit below. Yeah, so that one line of code is, and this code could be you clicking on some things, right? If it's a UI client in Windows, but for Mac or Linux, it's pasting that in. And what that code is doing is it's using something called an OpenSSL client that creates certificates and passing all those things like X509 or SHA-256. They are all parameters. Some are required by Salesforce. We're just configuring that command to generate a certificate for us. And that command does two things. It generates a certificate that we can upload to our connected app, and it also generates a private key that our mobile app developers can use to generate that token that I was talking about. So it splits out two things that are synchronized to each other. One goes to Salesforce, one goes to mobile app. That's how anything that mobile app does in terms of token and authentication, the connected app knows the same thing. It has the same amount of information. And so whenever you create a token on the mobile app, you send that token to Data Cloud. The connected app, using the same certificate that was created at the same time, can validate that this token came from the same key. Does that make sense? So that synchronization happens at the time of creation. So when we run this command. Okay. So since we're not, I wanted to send you that key, or that token rather. Now I'm thinking how I would do that, because I can't share files here. Can I, JB? Is there a permission?
I don't think there is a specific permission for that, Sandesh, but in the chat, do you see any option? Don't, right?
Okay,
Yeah, I don't see there is an option.
let me try.
How about Slack? Rahul, are you in the Slack channel?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You can post it in the Slack channel.
Also great, yeah. Okay.
No, actually, I'm not on the Slack channel. Sorry for the confusion.
Or Sandesh, we can share it on a drive and share it and link that in the video description as well. So everybody who do not have access to the Slack would have access to that. If you can share the file with me, I can post it on a shared drive. Or if you want to do that, you're welcome.
Okay, yeah, let me do that real quick. I can just share with Rahul as well. Rahul, is it the same email that you use for Gmail as well?
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe Sandesh, for now, let's share in the email, and after the session, we can share it on the drive.
Yeah, sounds good to me. All right. Okay, just sent it to you. Might take a minute. Okay, while we're waiting, why don't we go and create the integration user, Rahul, and then come back and finish
Sure.
that. So if you just
Sure.
want to create a new tab and set up. Yeah, let's go to users. Right, let's do a new user. Let's call it, yeah, you can call it Rahul integration user. Because we're not creating this for any individual, right? We're creating this as the means for the mobile app to connect to our Salesforce platform.
Sure.
Okay. You could do first name as Rahul and last name as integration user, because last name seems to be required. And feel free to add your own email. Let's make the username also something like Rahul integration user, Rahul at integration user, just that it's very obvious that this user is an integration user. Okay, that seems good. Now, the important part is the licensing part. For the integration user, we don't have to use the Salesforce or anything else. We can use the Salesforce integration specific license. So if you click on the drop down on the license, we can use the Salesforce integration license. And for profile, we can use the minimum API, because that will be enough for our purposes. We'll be adding permissions via permission set that allows this user access to Data Cloud. Okay, so if we want to save that,
No, it is showing some error.
oh, must be in the form of email address. Sorry, so maybe just .com or something.
Email me.
Might be taken. Let's see.
Yeah, it is showing.
Yes, it wasn't. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. So that's great. You're gonna check your email and see if you got the. If not, I'll send an actual email. Here I tried to share. That's weird. That shouldn't be the one. It is Gupta Rahul 650, right?
Right.
All right, let me actually try to send an email. Oh, there it is.
This one, the
Yep.
second.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the certificate. So if you want to download that to your local machine. I promise it's not dangerous.
No issue. Yes.
Now let's go back to the connected app and then add that as a certificate. So if you're going to click on the use digital signature right above the OAuth scope box.
This one.
Yep. And then you can choose a file.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's the certificate. And then, so right above that, there's another required field, which is the callback URL. This is not totally relevant for a JWT bearer flow, but it is required for some reason. So you can just add any URL. Let's add localhost. Let's do localhost. Actually, not sure if it checks for any formatting. So let's try to save this.
It is showing changes can take up to 10 minutes to take effect.
Okay, that's fine.
Mm.
Doesn't take that long generally, but yeah, let's do continue.
Invalid protocol.
Okay, so it actually does check for protocol as well. So let's do HTTP : in the beginning, might need the full. Now you can, yeah, just HTTP : / localhost. It's just going to be HTTP on localhost, not the S part.
Not the S part?
Yeah, so that should be good.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, so now at this point, we have our app set up, right? And if you scroll down in our OAuth section, there's a couple of things to note. There in your digital certificate row, you can see that the certificate has been parsed. I put all of those information in there. For example, it's my email address. We have Cervelo in there. This was created on my machine and I put those things in. So when you use that command or that tool to create a digital certificate, it asks you for some meta information, like who's the email address associated with the certificate, what's the organization unit, and another important one is when does this certificate expire? And that you can see is 19th January 2025. I think I set it for a year when I created it. So that's important. So if it is used past that, the mobile app, you need to, for maintenance reasons, you'll need to create a new certificate after that point. I think there are also ways to create a certificate that doesn't expire since this is self-signed, but wanted to mention that anyways, if you run into any issues later on. Okay, so that's one important part. Another important part to verify here is that selected OAuth scopes and everything came through, which it should, really, but just to verify, we have API, we have offline access, and we have the ingest API scopes. Okay, so now a couple of things we need to do is we need to go back to the integration user and then allow them access to that connected app. Right? Currently, they're not allowed to do that. To do that, we can do a couple of things. Like there's a couple of ways in Salesforce to do that. You can either assign access via the profiles, but for today, we'll be creating a permission set that allows them access both to the connected app and also to the Data Cloud. So if you want to go to permission sets instead, let's create that. Not the assignment. Also, if on the left, let's go to the permission sets tab to create a new one. On the very left of your screen. Sorry, yeah, different in place. You would be going there in the assignments if we had already created one, but we want to create a new permission set. So instead of, so remember what we're trying to do with the permission set, right? We are trying to create a permission that allows the user both access to the connected app and also to Data Cloud. So connected app part is pretty standard, but to allow people access to Data Cloud, you would either be assigning them the permission set that Data Cloud comes with. So if you want to scroll there in the window, Rahul, there are a couple Data Cloud permission sets that we can see. Those are legacy versions. There should also be a new one. Yeah, so you see the Data Cloud admin, Data Cloud data aware specialist. So what Salesforce recommends is that if you want to modify your permission sets, then you should clone the permission set that Data Cloud comes with, because some of the functionalities, some of the access that you need, you cannot create them from scratch. At least, and things are changing again with Data Cloud. So at least as far as I know, you can't create these from scratch. So let's clone the data aware specialist for now. Yeah, let's call it, I don't know, Rahul hands-on permission set. Okay, great. We can save that. All right, now we can do, now they have Data Cloud. Now this permission set has Data Cloud access, right? Because we literally just cloned a permission set that already had all the required access. So that part is done. Now we need to assign the access to the connected app. Two ways to do this, but if you go to the connected app itself, Rahul,
Yes.
yeah, so Rahul hands-on. Could have also done this through permission set. But yeah, if you want to click into it, there are a couple of ways to access this, and I'm always, okay. So this is actually managing the policies. So I think we should have clicked into it instead. But however, sorry for jumping around, but since we're here, we can do a couple of stuff on the connected app. So on the permitted users part, Rahul, sorry, right there under OAuth policies, if you look at the second panel, yeah. So currently it says all users may self-authorize, and we don't really want that, because the whole idea behind it on the left, sorry, right on the left, yeah. The whole idea behind, like I was saying earlier, the whole idea behind using a JWT flow was that we don't want users to deal with authorization, right? We want our external application to be pre-authenticated so that users don't have to log into Salesforce to do all this syncing. So we want to do admin approved users are pre-authorized, so that if somebody has access to this connected app, they are authorized to use whatever the connected app is authorized to use. In this case, Data Cloud APIs, without logging in, right? Without explicitly allowing that. Yeah, let's also relax IP restrictions, because we don't need that. So we want to relax them instead. So that would be last option. If you want to click on that drop down again. Yep, we're going to relax, and then we want to click on the refresh token is valid until revoked. Okay, that seems good to me. And we can save this at the top or the bottom. Okay, so that handles one thing. If you want to click on that label, Rahul, on that Rahul hands-on, that also opens the policies part. No, if you scroll down, Isn't there a permission set part? Oh, it is here. Okay. Yeah. So you see the permission set, we can manage permission sets in there. So let's add the new one that we just created. Yeah, let's save that.
It is showing some validation added.
Permission set license doesn't allow assigned connected apps. That is interesting. What's the license? I thought CDP license would allow it. Well, I know it is allowed because we've done this. Let's try it another way. So if you want to go to the permission sets again, and then click on the one that you just created. So let's say Rahul something.
Here it is.
Yep, let's click on that. Wonder why that would be the case. And then if you could, oh, so this allows you, okay, I see. So looks like the license, which makes sense. The license is preset when you clone from a data cloud permission set. So we can't assign, looks like we can't assign it to the connected app directly. So what we want to do, Rahul, is let's create a new permission set.
Sure. From scratch, or do I need to?
We can just do it from scratch, and it's a very simple one.
Okay.
Oh, you might have accidentally clicked on the new view instead of new permission set. So if you just want to cancel out, yeah, let's just click on new on the left there. Yeah, you can call it something like Rahul app access, connected app access. Okay, that's fine. And let's leave that license empty for now. You should be able to do Salesforce integration, but interest of time, if something does happen, let's click save. And now this is the permission set that actually will allow access to the connected app. So you see the assigned connected apps label there, the second one. Yep. So if you click into that, let's do edit.
Edit
On the bottom. Yep. There you go. Now we can assign that. Save it. Okay, great. Now this permission set allows users access to this connected app. Now we can go back to the integration user and assign them both these permission sets that we just created. So if you want to go to users, it would be the integration user Rahul.
Yes.
I think. Not that one. If you scroll a little bit below in that thing, yeah, I can see that's not the one. So scroll up a little bit. Yeah, you see the integration user Rahul. That's the one that you just created. Yep. Let's scroll down somewhere. Oh, sorry. This is if you want to cancel out, this is editing their information, right? We don't want to do that. We want to assign permission sets. So instead of clicking on edit, if you want to click on the Rahul integration user instead. Yep, now scroll down. there will be a section for permission set assignments. Yep. So if you click on edit assignments here, this should allow you to add a bunch of permission sets. We'll only be assigning the ones that we just created. One was the apps access. Yep. And another is the Rahul hands-on permission set. So let's talk about the difference here again, right? While we're assigning this, one of the permission sets, and sorry that they are named similarly, the Rahul apps access allows the integration user access to the connected app, right? That is their authentication privileges. Like they are valid user of the connected app. The second one, Rahul hands-on permission set, allows them authorization to access Data Cloud because that permission set was cloned from Data Aware Specialist that allows them to do stuff in Data Cloud, which includes adding data. So let's save this. And maybe Data Aware Specialist is too high of a permission. That depends on use cases. Okay, so we have a lot of stuff covered here. Just wanted to reiterate everything that we did, right? Because we've been jumping around screens, been sending files. What we were trying to do was we were trying to get our external mobile application to be able to send data to Data Cloud. And there were a couple of steps involved. One was setting up the connected app so that we validate the external application to the Salesforce platform. Right? Salesforce platform needs to know that the external application that'll be calling its API is legit, is validated by an administrator. That's what we do by creating a connected app. And the point of uploading the digital certificate was because certificates are a medium to authenticate any user that comes from the external application to the Salesforce platform. And digital certificates and JWT bearer flow, it's just one way to do it. There are multiple other ways. If you look up authorization flows in Salesforce, you'll see plenty of that. And this is not Data Cloud specific, right? Anytime you want to integrate any external application to Salesforce, you need to use one of those authorization flows. And then we created that before mentioned integration user on whose behalf our external application will be calling the Salesforce APIs. And for that, the integration user themselves need to have access to both the connected app and also to Data Cloud. That's why we created two permission sets individually for those two items that the integration user needs to be able to do. And we assign those permission sets to the integration user. That brings us to now. And now our application should be fully set up, except for one small item, right? So, and this tripped me up for a while. And this was actually even less obvious before, but Data Cloud recently made a change which made it a little more obvious. So the integration user is actually missing one permission. They have access to the connected app. They also have access to Data Cloud, but turns out you also need them to have explicit access to a data space in Data Cloud, right? If you remember in Data Cloud, there are concepts of data spaces that segments your entire database into different segments. So you can silo your data if you have different brands or different regions, things like that. Okay, so let's add that. Rahul, if we go to the, let me try to remember how to do that. If you go to the permission set that we cloned from the Data Aware Specialist, Rahul hands-on, yeah, I think that's the one. So if you click into that, you should see something like data space. That's the one, yeah, Data Cloud Data Space Management. So we click on there. You see data spaces is empty right now. So this permission set doesn't allow you access to any data spaces. So if you edit, now this should show all the data spaces that you have, but ours is a demo org, so it only has default as a space. If you click save, yeah. Now the integration user is fully ready. They have access to everything to actually make an an API call. Okay. So, all right. So now the demonstration of this actually working, you being able to make API calls is through, okay. Just trying to think in the interest of time, we only have 10 minutes left in our session. So should we use Postman or the application is what I'm deliberating on. Do you have Postman installed, Rahul?
No, I don't have.
Computer?
Let
Okay,
me.
that's completely fine. Let me show. Okay. So do you want to, let's go back to that article that I shared and scroll to the very bottom of it. It has a couple of things that I want to share. I can send it again in chat. Oh, you found it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, very, very bottom of it. Just wanted to verbally touch on everything that's now required. So if you look at that list of 3 items, right, we just finished that default part. Yeah, if you look at that 3 items, this is all, after you as an administrator have set this all up in the platform, now you need to pass some information to the developers of the mobile team so that they can do the integration. And these are the 3 important things that you'll be providing to them. One is the client ID of the connected app. And we actually didn't see that. Just a second. And then we also want to provide them the private key. And this is what I was talking about earlier, Rahul. So if you had created that certificate yourself, you would have 2 items split out as the output. One is the key and one is a certificate. The certificate, I provided that to you. I also have the key that's associated with the same certificate, and I would provide this key to the developers so that they can encode their integration user the same way so that they can synchronize with the platform. The other thing that they need is the username of the integration user, right? Because we're trying to log in through the mobile app as the integration user, so they also need to know who that user is. Now we know where to get the private key and the username, but where do you get the client ID? For that, let's go back to the connected app page.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you're gonna click on Rahul hands-on. And where did we get to? This is the policies page. If you want to go back, we want to get to that. We want to get to the page where it tells you the OAuth scopes. This is not here. Do you want to go back to the app manager, please? Not there, to the main app manager.
Okay.
This step always confuses me. Do I click edit in the connected app or there? So if you find your app here, Rahul hands-on, yep, and click on that little thing. And let's click on, click on view. Okay, there we go. So this is the page, yeah. If you click on manage consumer details, this takes you to the classic version, I think. You can see that this is an important step because if you had these client details, your external application can make API calls. So Salesforce asks you to verify before you can access these
Right.
details.
Yes, I think it is verified now.
Okay, great. Now you can see that it gives you both the consumer key and the secret. The secret is not relevant for us at this moment, but the consumer key is what the article mentions as the client ID. And so that'll be one of the items that you'll need. And if you scroll a little bit below to the Postman part, and Postman is just a tool to make API calls. If you're doing this in a real application, you'd be including these values, or your developers for the mobile app would be including these values in their setup. So you need to put your client ID in there that we just saw, need to put that private key that's generated together with the certificate, and also the username, which was hands-on integration for me. Once you put these things in, you can make API calls. Okay, so what I wanted to then do is to actually see the API calls happening. So I'll paste you the URL to our mobile app, Rahul, so that we can do this really quickly. Let me find that. Okay. Or you know what? Maybe since we're done with the setup, maybe I'll share my screen really quickly since we have 5 minutes only, and then I'll show the API calls really happening in the platform.
Sure, makes sense.
If that makes sense. Okay. Just to show everyone what would actually look like. And I did do a demo like this during the session as well. Okay. So here's the application. Let me log out really quickly. Yeah. So if you come to this mobile app, this is what it looked like. And if we open up the debug panel, right, so say we have all that set up, right? You created your connected app, you have all that authentication and authorization done, and you passed those items, those 3 checklist items to your developers, in which case this mobile app developers, and then they included that in their code to make those API calls. Then now if anybody logs in, for example, I have the test user here, right? A couple of steps happen, and I ignored some of this during my session because we hadn't talked about the bearer flow and what is happening. But now we can read through this and then see what is going on in the back end. So whenever I logged in, we needed to send data to the ingestion API, and there are a lot of preparation steps before that, right? So I don't know if this is readable, so let me zoom in to this panel. So first thing that happened is we are preparing to send it to Data Cloud. That's just a debug message. Now, the first thing the mobile application did was create a token for that integration user that you just created, Rahul. And then using that token, we are now requesting a core access token. What that means is we are asking Salesforce for access to the Salesforce platform. So we're authenticating, and to do that, we're passing that token for the integration user. Okay, and then if we manage all of those permission sets, you know, if the user has access to the connected app, then Salesforce will successfully give you that core access token. And in addition to that, it will also actually tell you the URL of your instance. In our case, it's something like servelloinc.salesforce.com or something like that. Now, once we have the access token, we need to do an additional step, which we wouldn't need to do if we were just accessing, say, a lead or a contact record. If you wanted to do that on the platform, you could do that right away in this step. But we're trying to access something in Data Cloud, which is a different application than the Salesforce platform itself, even though it looks like it's there. So what we need to do is we need to ask for a Data Cloud specific token. That's what this part is doing. So it's now using the Salesforce token that we just received from Salesforce and asking for a Data Cloud specific token. And once we get that, now we're finally streaming data to that API. So the API is formed using 2 items. One is the connector name, in our case, Bootcamp Mobile App Stream. And finally, the object name that we're currently trying to stream to, in this case, is the user login, because we're trying to we're trying to push the engagement event of the user logging in. And in the payload for that API, we include all the information that Rahul was showing earlier from the connector, the app ID, timestamp, transaction ID, email, things like that. And finally, the string is successful. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff involved in the back end to actually make this call, right? And setting this up is also non-trivial. So thank you for joining today. And thanks, Rahul, for volunteering to go through all the build steps. There were a little snags in the middle, but I think we did it. So I really wanted to use what you just built, Rahul, and actually make that connect that to our application, but we didn't have time. So that is it. If anybody has any questions, you can take them. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah, I see one question here, Sandesh. If Data Cloud is hosted on a standalone Data Cloud home org, do we have to connect CRM first and then do all the steps of connected app that you mentioned in this session?
No, I don't think so, because there also you can create connected apps, right? You don't need to, this is not about the CRM. We just happen to have it on the same instance, but no. But you would, yes, need to create connected app and do all that.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions. So I think we can call it a wrap. Thank you, Sandesh, for this hands-on session. And thanks everyone for joining. So we have few other hands-on sessions lined up happening every Thursday, 8 a.m. Eastern. And also we have the deep dive sessions, 3 more deep dive sessions published as of now. More will be added. So the deep dive sessions will happen on Tuesdays, 8 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you register to all those and make sure you follow our LinkedIn handles. So you have all the updates about the upcoming events and all the recordings as well. With that, I think we can call it a wrap. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Hope to see
thanks,
you
everybody.
again. Thank you.
Thank you.